I'm Cassandra Mitchell, 32, standing at the center of a dazzling corporate gala that I organized. The champagne flows freely as industry titans mingle. If only my family could see me now, the same people who called me worthless and swore I'd never amount to anything. The whispers stop abruptly as my father's former business partners enter the room. My mother's champagne glass nearly slips from her fingers. My brother's smug smile vanishes. My sister pales visibly. Revenge, I've learned, is best served at precisely the right temperature, not cold, but perfectly calculated. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button if you've ever been underestimated, and subscribe to join our community of survivors and thrivers. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up in Beacon Hill, one of Boston's most prestigious neighborhoods. Our brownstone was immaculate, just like the facade my family presented to the world. From the outside, the Mitchells were the picture of success, wealthy, respected, perfect. But behind those mahogany doors, I lived in the shadows of expectations I could never seem to meet. My father, Richard Mitchell, was a business magnate whose name appeared regularly in the Wall Street Journal. He built Mitchell Enterprises from the ground up, transforming it into a powerhouse in international logistics and supply chain management. Dad was quiet, calculating, and rarely home. When he was, his attention focused almost exclusively on my older brother, James. James was the golden child, groomed from birth to inherit the family empire. 3 years my senior, he had my father's sharp features and shrewd mind for business. Every achievement of his was celebrated with lavish dinners and expensive gifts. His room was a shrine to success. Trophies lined his shelves, framed certificates covered his walls, and he knew exactly what his future held. My mother, Evelyn, was a former debutante whose entire identity revolved around maintaining our family's social standing. She hosted charity galas, sat on museum boards, and never missed an opportunity to showcase her perfect children well, 2 of them anyway. Kimberly, my younger sister by 2 years, completed the family portrait as the beautiful, charming socialite in training. With our mother's golden hair and effortless grace, Kim was being prepared for an advantageous marriage. She learned the social arts at mother's knee, which fork to use, which families were acceptable, and how to make influential people feel important. And then there was me. Cassandra, stand up straight. No one will take you seriously if you slouch like that, my mother would hiss at social gatherings. God, Cassie, do you have to be such a nerd all the time? Kim would roll her eyes whenever I mentioned a book I was reading or a science project I was working on. The Mitchell brain obviously skipped a generation with you. James would laugh when I struggled with the business concepts our father quizzed him on at dinner. I was 12 when I won the state science competition with a project on algorithmic efficiency in distribution networks, inspired by watching my father's business, though he never knew. The competition fell on the same day as James's baseball championship. I stood on that stage, accepting my medal, scanning the audience for my family's faces. They weren't there. Not one of them. When I arrived home, clutching my medal and certificate, the house was alive with celebration. James's team had won. Champagne corks popped for my 16-year-old brother's victory while my achievement went unnoticed. "Oh, that's nice, dear," my mother said distantly when I showed her my medal. "Did you see your brother's game-winning hit? Everyone's talking about it." That night, I cried myself to sleep, the medal shoved in my desk drawer. But something hardened in me, too, a determination that would ultimately save me. Everything changed when I was 16. My father's Mercedes veered off the road one rainy night. The police called it an accident, slick roads, a sharp turn taken too fast. The funeral was a who's who of Boston's elite. I stood between James and Kimberly, numb with a grief I wasn't sure I had the right to feel. Had he ever really known me at all? The will reading a week later seemed to answer that question. James, 19 and in his first year at Harvard Business, received 70% controlling interest in Mitchell Enterprises. Kimberly got a trust fund that would keep her in luxury for life. My mother received the house and a generous stipend. And I got nothing except a sealed letter with instructions that it not be opened until my 25th birthday. Guess Dad knew who the worthless one was, James had snickered as we left the lawyer's office. The nickname stuck, the worthless one. That's what they called me from then on, sometimes to my face, sometimes when they thought I couldn't hear. Each time it was said, my resolve strengthened. I graduated high school with honors and scrambled for scholarships. I worked 3 jobs to afford what the scholarships didn't cover at MIT. Every holiday break, I returned to that house on Beacon Hill, only to be reminded of my place or lack of one in the Mitchell family. Still wasting your time with those computer classes? My mother would sigh over Christmas dinner. You know there's no money in technology, right? James would laugh, though Mitchell Enterprises was already beginning to invest heavily in logistics software. Each dig, each dismissal, each look of pity or contempt became fuel. I would show them. Somehow, someday, I would make them see exactly what they had dismissed. MIT felt like coming home. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who valued what I valued: innovation, intelligence, hard work. I thrived in the competitive environment, pulling all-nighters in computer labs, debating algorithm efficiency over midnight coffee, and gradually developing an idea that consumed me. I was majoring in computer science with a minor in business management, and during my junior year, I began developing software that would revolutionize supply chain management. It used adaptive algorithms to predict bottlenecks and inefficiencies before they occurred, potentially saving companies millions in lost time and resources. To pay for school, I worked as a barista in the mornings, a library assistant in the afternoons, and a coding tutor on weekends. My hands were perpetually stained with coffee and my eyes burned from staring at screens, but for the first time in my life, I felt purposeful. During a rare visit home for Thanksgiving my senior year, I made the mistake of mentioning my software concept at dinner. Mother was half listening, more concerned with the placement of her new Limoges dinnerware. Kimberly was texting under the table, but James looked up from his plate with sudden interest. "Sounds interesting, Cassie," he said, using my nickname for the first time in years. "Tell me more about it." Desperate for validation and shocked by his interest, I explained the basics of my project. James asked insightful questions, nodding thoughtfully. For a brief, shining moment, I felt like I finally had his respect. "You know," he said as we cleared the table, "this could have applications for Mitchell Enterprises. Why don't you come by the office tomorrow? You could show me your prototype." The next day, I dressed in my only professional outfit, a blazer I'd found at a consignment shop and a skirt that had been Kimberly's cast-off. I prepared a presentation, my heart pounding with nervous excitement. Was this it? My chance to finally prove my worth to my family? James's assistant led me to a conference room where James sat with several executives. I gave my presentation, explaining my vision with passion and precision. They asked questions that showed they understood the potential impact. For once, I wasn't the worthless one, I was a Mitchell with something valuable to offer. "This is impressive, Cassandra," James said as the executives filed out. "Let me think about how we might work together on this." 2 weeks later, back at MIT, I received a call from a former classmate who now worked at Mitchell Enterprises. "Cassie, I thought you should know. James presented a new software initiative to the board yesterday. It's your project. Almost exactly. He's claiming it as his own development." My hands trembled as I hung up the phone. I called James immediately. "How could you?" I demanded when he answered. "Cassie, business is business," he said coolly. "You shared an idea in a family conversation. Mitchell Enterprises is developing something similar. You have no proof of anything else." "It's my work, James. My algorithms, my design." "Do you have a patent? Registered IP?" "No." "Then it's just an idea, little sister, and ideas are worthless without execution. Something you should understand by now." I was devastated but determined to move forward independently. I approached venture capitalists with my refined proposal, only to be told repeatedly that they'd heard Mitchell Enterprises was developing similar technology. Why would they back the unproven younger sister when they could wait for the established company's version? One by one, potential investors pulled out. My senior project advisor suggested I pivot to something else. My graduation approached with my dreams crumbling around me. The final blow came at my graduation dinner. Mother had reluctantly flown in, though Kimberly was too busy with her European vacation to attend. James came, ostensibly to support me, but really to twist the knife. "I secured another round of funding for our new software division today," he announced over dessert. $10 million. The board is thrilled with the prototype. My prototype. My work. My vision. I excused myself to the bathroom and sobbed silently in a stall. When I emerged, red-eyed but composed, I'd made a decision. I wouldn't give up. I couldn't. That night, back in my nearly empty apartment, an email arrived from an address I didn't recognize. I know what your brother did. I can help. Meet me tomorrow, 2 p.m., Cambridge Innovation Center. I hovered over the delete button, suspecting a scam or, worse, another of James's mind games. But desperation and curiosity won out. What did I have to lose? My 25th birthday arrived with little fanfare. I'd been living in a tiny apartment in Cambridge, working as a systems analyst for a small tech company while trying to rebuild my software in my spare time. The theft of my idea had left me cautious, secretive, and frankly, a little paranoid. I'd nearly forgotten about my father's letter until the law firm contacted me, reminding me that I could now claim it. I picked it up that afternoon, the heavy cream envelope burning in my pocket all the way home. What final disappointment had my father left me? Sitting cross-legged on my bed, I carefully broke the seal and unfolded the thick stationery. "My dear Cassandra," it began, and already tears pricked at my eyes. He'd never called me that in life. "If you're reading this, I've been gone for 9 years, and you've just turned 25. I imagine those years haven't been easy for you in the Mitchell household. I've failed you in many ways, but perhaps most significantly by not recognizing your unique brilliance until it was too late to tell you myself. Your mind works differently than James's or Kimberly's. While they excel at playing the games that our social circle values, you see systems and patterns that others miss. I noticed it when you were just a child, asking questions about my business that even my executives didn't think to ask. I've watched you struggle to fit into the mold your mother created for a proper Mitchell daughter. I've watched you retreat into books and computers when the family rejected your true self. And I've done nothing of failing for which I cannot forgive myself. But I can offer you this: 3 names: Warren Reynolds, Sophia Blackwell, and Jonathan Chen. They are my most trusted business associates and friends, perhaps my only true friends. They have instructions to help you, should you ever approach them. They have resources that can change your path. This is not charity, Cassandra. This is investment in the most brilliant Mitchell of your generation. Prove me right. With regret and hope. Your father, Richard Mitchell. I read the letter 3 times, tears flowing freely. All those years he had seen me. He had recognized something in me that even I hadn't fully believed in. I researched the 3 names immediately. Warren Reynolds was a venture capitalist with a legendary reputation for backing unlikely winners. Sophia Blackwell had pioneered enterprise software in the 90 seconds and now ran one of the most respected tech incubators in the country. Jonathan Chen controlled an international distribution network that spanned 4 continents. They were titans, and supposedly, they were waiting for me. It took me a week to work up the courage to contact Warren Reynolds. His assistant put me through immediately when I mentioned my name. "Cassandra Mitchell," he said warmly. "I've been waiting for your call for 9 years. We met the following day at his office overlooking Boston Harbor. Warren was in his 60s, with silver hair and penetrating blue eyes that evaluated me as I took a seat across from his imposing desk. "You look like him," he said simply. "Same intensity." "You knew my father well?" I asked. "Richard was my best friend for 30 years. Also a magnificent bastard when he wanted to be," Warren chuckled. "He made me promise not to contact you until you reached out. Said you needed to find your own way first." "What exactly did he ask you to do?" Warren leaned back. "He made the 3 of us promise to evaluate you if you ever came to us. If you showed the same brilliance he believed you possessed, we were to back you, completely." "Back me? In what?" "Whatever you choose to build, Miss Mitchell." Over the next month, I met with all 3 of my father's friends. Sophia Blackwell, a formidable woman in her 50s, grilled me mercilessly about my software concept, finding and exploiting every weakness in my plan until I was ready to scream, then smiled and said, "You've got it, the ability to take criticism and improve rather than crumble. Richard was right about you." Jonathan Chen, a quiet man with an encyclopedic knowledge of global markets, listened to my pitch silently, then asked, "What happens when your brother tries to crush you? Because he will." "I'll be ready," I promised, with more confidence than I felt. The 3 of them met privately after my individual meetings. A week later, I was summoned to Warren's office again. "We've decided," he said, without preamble, We're in. 10 million in initial funding, access to our networks, and personal mentorship. I nearly fell out of my chair. 10 million? Your father left funds in trust with each of us specifically for this purpose. But make no mistake, this isn't a gift. It's an investment. We expect returns. Of course, I said quickly. But why wait all these years? Why didn't he just tell me this himself? Warren's expression softened slightly. Richard believed that adversity would either break you or forge you into something extraordinary. He wanted to know which before committing these resources. So, this was a test? My entire life after his death was a test? Life is a test, Cassandra. Richard just made sure you'd have support when you were ready to take the final exam. I left Warren's office with a check that changed everything and a turbulent mix of emotions, gratitude, vindication, and lingering anger at my father's manipulative approach. But most of all, I felt something I'd almost forgotten: hope. Within a month, Mitchell Innovation was incorporated. I deliberately chose the family name partly as a tribute to my father, but mostly as a declaration of war to my brother. I was a Mitchell too, and it was time everyone remembered that. With Warren, Sophia, and Jonathan's backing, Mitchell Innovation took shape rapidly. I leased office space in Cambridge, far enough from Mitchell Enterprises' downtown Boston headquarters to avoid accidental encounters, but close enough to draw from the same talent pool. My first hires were former classmates from MIT, brilliant programmers who'd seen the potential in my original concept. I was honest with them about what had happened with James and Mitchell Enterprises. They'll have a head start, I told the team during our first strategy meeting. They've been developing their version of our software for over a year. But they're building on a stolen foundation, and they don't understand the vision like we do. I rebuilt my software from scratch, improving on my original algorithms and adding features I'd conceptualized since. We worked around the clock, fueled by a combination of ambition and, at least in my case, the desire to prove my family wrong. Warren connected me with his network of potential clients. Sophia helped refine our business model and marketing strategy. Jonathan offered insights into international markets we could target while staying under Mitchell Enterprises' radar. 6 months in, we had a working prototype that outperformed anything on the market. Early tests showed efficiency improvements of 28% over standard systems, including, according to our intelligence, what Mitchell Enterprises was developing. Word began to spread in the industry about the upstart company founded by the other Mitchell. We secured our first 3 clients, small companies willing to take a chance on innovative technology from an unproven source. That's when my mother called. "Cassandra, darling, it's been too long," she cooed into the phone, as if we'd ever had the kind of relationship where such endearments were natural. I hadn't spoken to any family member since my graduation dinner 2 years earlier. "What do you want, Mother?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Can't a mother call her daughter without an ulterior motive? "I've been hearing things, good things, about your little company. I thought perhaps we could have lunch." Warning bells rang in my head, but curiosity won out. We met at an upscale restaurant in Back Bay that weekend. Mother looked exactly the same, perfectly coiffed ash blonde hair, impeccable designer outfit, the calculated warmth of a woman who'd made social navigation her life's work. "You look professional," she said, which from her was almost a compliment. "This business venture seems to be working out for you." "It is," I said simply. "We're growing faster than projected. James mentioned you've made some connections in the industry." And there it was. The real reason for this sudden maternal interest. "Did he send you to pump me for information, Mother?" She had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Don't be crude, Cassandra. We're family." I thought it was time to mend fences. "James agrees." "I'm sure he does," I thought. "What's really going on?" I pressed. "Mitchell Enterprises suddenly worried about the competition?" "Don't be absurd. Your brother's company is valued at billions. He's hardly concerned about the startup." She sipped her wine. "Though he did mention your software concept sounds remarkably similar to something Mitchell Enterprises is developing." "You mean the concept he stole from me?" I said quietly. Mother waved her hand dismissively. "Water under the bridge, surely. Perhaps there's a way for you two to work together instead of competing. Family should support family, after all." The irony was almost too much. For the next few weeks, Mother called regularly, always asking casual questions about my business questions that became increasingly specific about our technology, client list, and expansion plans. I fed her harmless information, curious to see where this was going. One evening, I stayed late at the office, returning unexpectedly to retrieve my forgotten phone. I found my mother in my office, photographing documents on my desk, detailed development plans for our next software release. "What are you doing?" I demanded from the doorway. She startled, nearly dropping her phone. "Cassandra, I was just waiting for you to return." "By taking pictures of confidential documents?" Her expression hardened, the pretense of maternal concern evaporating. "James needs to know what he's up against. So he sent his mommy to spy for him?" How pathetic. "Don't you dare speak about your brother that way. He's built something magnificent while you've been playing with computers. He has responsibilities to the Mitchell legacy that you can't understand." "Get out," I said, my voice deadly quiet. "And tell James that if I find any Mitchell Enterprises employee near my company again, I'll sue for corporate espionage faster than he can say, 'family loyalty.'" She gathered her designer handbag with as much dignity as she could muster. At the door, she turned back. "You'll regret choosing business over family, Cassandra. The Mitchells have stood together for generations. You're making a terrible mistake." "No, Mother. My mistake was ever hoping for your approval. It's not worth having." The next morning, Mitchell Enterprises announced an aggressive expansion into exactly the market segment we'd been planning to target. The press release quoted James Mitchell. "We're excited to lead innovation in this space, though we're always amused by amateur hour copycats trying to follow our lead." The message was clear. He knew what we were planning, and he was determined to crush us before we could execute. That night, I called an emergency meeting with Warren, Sophia, and Jonathan. "They've declared war," I said, showing them the press release and explaining my mother's espionage attempt. "Are you surprised?" Sophia asked. "No," I admitted, "just disappointed." "Never be disappointed when your enemies show their true nature," Jonathan said quietly. "Be grateful for the clarity." "The question is," Warren interjected, "what are you going to do about it?" I looked at these three people who had believed in me when no one else did, people my father had trusted, my real family, in all the ways that mattered. "We accelerate," I said firmly. "We push the next release ahead of schedule, we target bigger clients, and we make damn sure everyone knows which Mitchell company truly understands this technology." They all nodded, and in that moment, I felt my father's presence more strongly than I had since his death. He had prepared me for this battle without my knowledge. Now it was time to show him and everyone else that I was ready. Mitchell Enterprises launched their attack on multiple fronts. First came the public relations offensive. Industry publications suddenly featured interviews with James talking about innovation in the Mitchell DNA and subtly implying that any other company using the Mitchell name was attempting to trade on his company's established reputation. Then came the whisper campaign. Potential clients would suddenly cancel meetings with us, offering vague excuses. When pressed, one eventually admitted, "We heard your software fails catastrophically under load testing. We can't risk that kind of disruption." It was a lie, of course. Our software had passed every stress test with flying colors, but mud sticks, especially when thrown by a billion-dollar company with deep industry connections. Sophia connected me with a trusted industry journalist who confirmed what we suspected. Mitchell Enterprises' sales team was systematically spreading rumors about our product's supposed instability. "Classic fear, uncertainty, and doubt tactics," Warren said when I told him. "They can't compete on technical merit, so they're poisoning the well." We countered by publishing our testing methodology and results openly, inviting independent verification. It helped somewhat, but the damage was difficult to undo. Several major prospects we'd been courting signed with Mitchell Enterprises instead. That's when Kimberly reached out. Unlike my mother's obvious ploy, my sister's approach was more subtle. She invited me for coffee just as sisters, claiming she'd been thinking about me and was genuinely impressed by what I'd built. "I've always been the family diplomat," she said, stirring her latte at a cafe equidistant between our offices. "Remember when you and James fought over that model airplane kit when we were kids? I was the one who negotiated the peace treaty." I remembered differently. Kimberly had convinced me to give James the main components while keeping the pretty decorative pieces for myself. I'd ended up with useless plastic bits while James got the functional plane. "What's your point, Kim?" This fight between you and James is bad for everyone. Bad for the family name, bad for both businesses, bad for Boston's tech community. I think I can help negotiate a truce. A truce requires mutual respect. James doesn't respect me or what I've built. That's not true, she insisted. He talks about you all the time. He's impressed, Cassie, even if he won't admit it publicly. He's just worried about the Mitchell Enterprises shareholders seeing divided family loyalty as a liability. Despite my suspicions, a small part of me wanted to believe her. The part that still craved family acceptance, that wanted peace more than justice. What kind of truce did you have in mind? I asked cautiously. A meeting. Neutral territory. You, me, James, and a few key people from both sides. I've already spoken to some potential investors who are interested in both companies and want to see this rivalry resolved. Warning bells rang again, louder this time, but I silenced them. Maybe there was a way forward that didn't involve all-out war with my brother. Maybe Kimberly really had grown up. I agreed to the meeting, which was scheduled for the following week at an exclusive club in Boston. I brought my CTO and CFO, expecting a small strategic discussion. Instead, I walked into an ambush. The room held not just James and Kimberly, but a dozen people, including several venture capitalists who had previously declined to invest in Mitchell Innovation. James sat at the head of the table like a king holding court. "Ah, the prodigal sister arrives," he said with a smirk. "Thank you for joining us." Before I could respond, he launched into a presentation about Mitchell Enterprises' market dominance and growth projections. Charts and graphs illustrated their supposed technological superiority. The subtext was clear. Mitchell Innovation was a temporary annoyance, not a serious competitor. Now, James concluded smoothly, my sister will explain why her company deserves your consideration despite being late to market with derivative technology. All eyes turned to me. Kimberly had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, but she said nothing in my defense. I had come unprepared for a formal presentation, but years of being underestimated by my family had trained me well for precisely this moment. I stood, took a breath, and began. Mr. Reynolds, would you say that supply chain efficiency is primarily about speed or accuracy? I addressed one of the investors directly. Both, of course, but accuracy ultimately drives sustainable speed, he replied, looking intrigued. Exactly. Now, let me demonstrate why our approach prioritizes accuracy first, creating a foundation for speed that actually compounds over time rather than degrading. For the next 20 minutes, without slides or prepared remarks, I broke down the fundamental differences between our approach and Mitchell Enterprises. I explained how our algorithms learned and adapted from usage patterns, while theirs relied on static models that would require constant manual updating. The room's energy shifted. Investors began asking pointed technical questions that I answered with confidence, while James struggled with the details he'd left to his development team. If you're evaluating supply chain solutions, I concluded, you're choosing between a system designed to look impressive in the first year versus one built to deliver compounding value for a decade. Mitchell Enterprises is selling you a product. We're offering a partnership. Several investors were now openly interested, asking for follow-up meetings. James's face had turned an alarming shade of red. This meeting was meant to discuss collaboration, not competition, Kimberly interjected smoothly, trying to regain control. Perhaps we could focus on potential synergies between the companies? I think we've clearly established there are fundamental differences in our approaches, I replied. Thank you for arranging this opportunity to clarify them for everyone. As the meeting broke up, James cornered me by the door. You think you're so clever, he hissed. But you're playing in my sandbox, little sister. I built relationships with these people while you were still struggling through college. Maybe, I acknowledged, but they invest in technology and results, not relationships. And on that playing field, you're the one at a disadvantage. I left with 3 solid leads from investors who'd previously dismissed us. Kimberly's attempt to humiliate me had backfired spectacularly. That evening, she called. That wasn't supposed to go that way, she said, without preamble. What way was it supposed to go, Kim? Was I meant to crumble under pressure? Embarrass myself in front of potential investors? James said you weren't prepared for serious business discussions, that you'd see how out of your depth you are. And you believed him, just like you always do. A pause. I'm sorry, Cassie. I thought I was helping the family. No, you thought you were helping James. There's a difference. The question is whether you'll ever be able to see it. I hung up, feeling a strange mix of sadness and satisfaction. My family would never be what I'd hoped for as a child. But I was finally becoming who I needed to be despite them. Everything hinged on the Hoffman Global contract. They were a multinational conglomerate looking to overhaul their entire supply chain management system, a contract worth over $50 million. Winning it would cement Mitchell Innovation as a serious industry player. Losing it, particularly to Mitchell Enterprises, would set us back years. Both our companies had made it to the final round of consideration. The deciding factor would be our presentations to Hoffman's executive committee scheduled for the same day, with Mitchell Enterprises presenting in the morning and us in the afternoon. Our team had been preparing for weeks. I'd personally led the development of a customized demo that showed exactly how our software would integrate with Hoffman's existing systems and the projected efficiency gains over 5 years. Warren helped us refine our financial projections. Sophia coached me on presentation techniques. Jonathan leveraged his relationship with Hoffman's international division to gather intelligence on their pain points. The night before the presentation, I stayed late at the office, reviewing every detail one last time. Our pitch was solid, comprehensive, and compelling. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe we might actually win. I was about to leave when our head of IT burst into my office, his face ashen. "We've been hacked," he said without preamble. "Someone's in our system." "What do you mean someone's in our system?" I was running a routine security check and found unusual activity. "Someone's been accessing our servers remotely. They've been in for at least 3 days." My blood ran cold. "The Hoffman presentation?" He nodded grimly. "They downloaded everything. The demo, the projections, the technical specifications, everything." I called an emergency all-hands meeting despite the late hour. By midnight, we'd confirmed the worst. Our entire presentation had been compromised. Not only that, but some of our core proprietary code had been accessed. "Can we trace the hack?" I asked our security team. "It's sophisticated," the lead security engineer explained. "They bounced through multiple servers across different countries. But we found something interesting. The final exit point was a high-end residential IP address in Beacon Hill. Beacon Hill, where my family's home was located. "You think Mitchell Enterprises is behind this?" my CTO asked. "I don't think it. I know it," I said grimly. "The question is what we do now." Our options were limited. Postponing wasn't possible. Hoffman had a strict timeline. Creating an entirely new presentation overnight was theoretically possible but practically impossible. Going forward with the compromised presentation meant Mitchell Enterprises would know exactly what we planned to show and could prepare counter-arguments for their earlier slot. "We need to call the police," our legal counsel suggested. "And say what? That we suspect my brother's company hacked us but can't prove it? That would just make us look desperate and unprofessional to Hoffman." It was the lowest point in Mitchell Innovation's short history. The team looked to me for direction, but for the first time, I didn't have an answer. We worked through the night trying to salvage what we could, but as morning approached, reality set in. We were going into the most important presentation of our company's life at a severe disadvantage. At 7 a.m., as we gulped coffee and frantically reworked our approach, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. "Is this Cassandra Mitchell?" a male voice asked when I answered. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is David Winters. We need to talk about Mitchell Enterprises." The name was vaguely familiar. Then it clicked. David had briefly worked in Mitchell Enterprises' IT department. We'd gone on a few dates 2 years ago, before I realized he was primarily interested in my family connections. "I'm a little busy right now, David." "I know about the hack," he said quietly. "I helped execute it." I nearly dropped the phone. "You did what?" "James hired me as a contractor to access your systems. He paid me $100,000 to extract your Hoffman presentation and any useful technical data." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I didn't realize how far he'd go. He's planning to use your exact demo sequence but claim your technology won't work in practice. He's going to make you look like frauds." "Why should I believe you?" "Because I'm sending you proof. Check your email." I put him on speaker and opened my email. There was a new message containing screenshots of James's email correspondence with David, outlining the hacking operation in detail, along with a recording of their phone conversation, planning how to use the stolen information. Why the sudden attack of conscience? I asked, still suspicious. What he's doing isn't just competitive business practice, it's illegal. And honestly, the way he talks about you is disturbing. This isn't business for him, it's personal. He wants to destroy you. After getting all the details from David, I called Sophia, Warren, and Jonathan for an emergency meeting at our office. They arrived within the hour, looking concerned but determined. We have evidence of corporate espionage, I explained, showing them what David had sent. But we still have the problem of our compromised presentation in 3 hours. You can't use it, Sophia said firmly. James will be waiting to tear it apart point by point. We don't have time to create something entirely new, I countered. No, Jonathan agreed, but you have time to create something authentic. They all looked at me expectantly. What do you mean? I asked. Forget slides. Forget rehearsed demos, Warren said. Tell your story, Cassandra, the real story, about innovation born from adversity, about software created by someone who understands the problems because she's lived them, and about corporate theft, Sophia added, not explicitly accusing Mitchell Enterprises, but making it clear that your journey hasn't been without significant challenges from established competitors. Hoffman doesn't just want software, Jonathan concluded. They want partners they can trust. Show them who you really are. I looked at these 3 mentors who had guided me through the darkest times, and something clicked into place. They were right. The greatest weapon I had wasn't technical specifications or fancy demos, it was truth. My truth. As I began reorganizing my approach, a commotion in the outer office caught our attention. Our receptionist appeared at the door, looking flustered. Miss Mitchell, there are some people here to see you. They say it's urgent. Behind her stood a team of technical experts, some of the best in their fields, all friends or colleagues of my 3 mentors. We brought reinforcements, Warren explained with a small smile. If we're going to rebuild your demonstration in 3 hours, we're going to need all the help we can get. For the next few frantic hours, we worked with this expanded dream team to create a presentation unlike anything we'd originally planned. It was leaner, more direct, and infinitely more powerful because it was true. When the time came to walk into Hoffman Global's headquarters, I was exhausted but resolute. Mitchell Enterprises had tried to destroy us through theft and deception. We would prevail through authenticity and innovation. The real Mitchell way, my father's way, and now mine. The Hoffman Global headquarters occupied a gleaming tower in downtown Boston. As my team and I rode the elevator to the executive floor, I caught sight of our reflection in the polished doors' tired but determined faces. We'd been awake for over 36 hours straight, fueled by coffee, adrenaline, and the collective will to not let James win. No matter what happens, I told them as the elevator slowed, I'm proud of what we've built together. The presentation room was intimidating, a massive conference table surrounded by stern-faced executives. At the far end sat Leonard Hoffman himself, the 70-year-old founder who rarely attended vendor presentations but had made an exception for this final selection. As we set up, I noticed James lingering at the back of the room with his CFO. His presence was unusual. Vendors typically didn't observe their competitors' presentations. He caught my eye and smiled smugly, clearly confident in his morning presentation and his knowledge of what we had planned. Or what he thought we had planned. Mr. Hoffman, distinguished committee members, I began. I understand you've already seen a presentation from Mitchell Enterprises this morning. I won't waste your time by covering the same ground. Instead, I'd like to tell you a story about why supply chain management matters to me personally. I saw James shift uncomfortably as I abandoned the expected script. When I was 12 years old, I created my first algorithm, a simple program to optimize the route I took delivering newspapers in my neighborhood. At 16, I lost my father, and with him, any support for my education or future. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through MIT, where I developed the core technology that would eventually become our company's foundation. The executive's expressions softened slightly as I continued. Our software wasn't born in a comfortable corporate R&D lab. It was created out of necessity, by someone who understood that in business, as in life, efficiency isn't a luxury, it's survival. For the next 40 minutes, I walked them through our approach, emphasizing not just what our software did, but why each feature existed, the real-world problems it solved, the inefficiencies it eliminated. I was brutally honest about our company's youth, but turned it into a strength: our adaptability, our hunger, our commitment to clients. When I finished the main presentation, Leonard Hoffman himself asked the first question. Miss Mitchell, your technology sounds promising, but Mitchell Enterprises presented some compelling data suggesting adaptive algorithms like yours fail under certain load conditions. How do you respond to that? Before I could answer, Warren Reynolds stood up from where he'd been sitting quietly at the back of the room. If I may, Mr. Hoffman. Warren Reynolds, Apex Ventures. Hoffman looked surprised. Warren, didn't expect to see you here. I wouldn't normally attend a vendor presentation, but Mitchell Innovation is a special investment for us. He addressed the room. The question about algorithm stability is an important one. Perhaps Miss Thomas Prostand. Mitchell could demonstrate the load testing results from last week. It was a perfect setup. We showed the stress test data that our overnight team had compiled, data that definitively proved our algorithms not only handled extreme loads, but actually improved performance under pressure, unlike the static models Mitchell Enterprises employed. James's face darkened as he realized his stolen information was now useless. Then Sophia Blackwell stood up. Sophia Blackwell, Horizon Incubator. If I could add something about innovation curves in this space? Sophia deftly highlighted the fundamental difference in approach between our companies, emphasizing how our technology would continue to improve over time, while Mitchell Enterprises would require costly manual updates. James was now furiously whispering to his CFO, clearly unprepared for this turn of events. Finally, Jonathan Chen rose. Jonathan Chen, Pacific Distribution Network. I'd like to address the international scalability question that I'm sure is on your minds. With calm authority, Jonathan explained how our system had been designed from the ground up for global deployment, with consideration for different regulatory environments, language requirements, and regional supply chain variations. By the time we concluded, the energy in the room had transformed. The executives were engaged, asking insightful questions that we answered with confidence and transparency. James had stopped whispering and was now staring at me with naked hostility. As we packed up our materials, Leonard Hoffman approached me directly. That was unexpected, Miss Mitchell. In 40 years of vendor selections, I've never seen a presentation quite like it. I hope that's a good thing, Mr. Hoffman. Authenticity usually is. He glanced at James, who was hovering nearby. Your brother gave a very polished presentation this morning. Very corporate, very safe. James is excellent at following established playbooks, I said diplomatically. Indeed, but in my experience, true innovation rarely comes from playbooks. He extended his hand. We'll be in touch very soon. As we left the room, James intercepted me in the hallway. What was that? He demanded. Reynolds? Blackwell? Chen? Since when are they involved in your little startup? Since the beginning, James. Dad made sure of it. His face registered shock, then anger. What are you talking about? Dad left me more than you thought, just not in the way you expected. Before he could respond, Leonard Hoffman emerged from the conference room and approached us. Mr. Mitchell, Miss Mitchell, it's not our usual protocol, but the committee has reached a unanimous decision. He looked between us. We've selected Mitchell Innovation as our supply chain partner. James's face went blank with shock. That's impossible. You can't have fully evaluated. We had all the information we needed, Hoffman interrupted firmly. Miss Mitchell, my office will be in touch tomorrow to begin contract discussions. He nodded politely and walked away. For a moment, James and I stood in silence. Then he leaned closer, his voice low and dangerous. You think you've won? This is one contract. I'll make sure it's your last. You've turned Dad's friends against the family business. Their loyalty should be to Mitchell Enterprises, not to you. Something in me snapped. Years of dismissal, betrayal, and sabotage crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. Their loyalty is to innovation and integrity, the real Mitchell legacy, not the hollow shell you've created. Dad knew exactly what would happen if he left everything to you. He saw what Mother's favoritism did to your character. That's why he made sure I had allies. You're lying, James hissed, but doubt had crept into his eyes. Read his letter to me sometime. He called me the most brilliant Mitchell of my generation. He was testing me all along, James. And he was testing you too. Guess who passed? I walked away, leaving my brother speechless for perhaps the first time in his life. My team was waiting by the elevators, trying unsuccessfully to hide their grins. "We did it," my CTO whispered as the doors closed behind us. "We're just getting started," I replied, feeling the weight of years lifting from my shoulders. Now the real work begins. That evening, Warren, Sophia, and Jonathan arranged a celebration at one of Boston's finest restaurants. As champagne flowed and my team reveled in our hard-won victory, I found myself overwhelmed with gratitude for these three people who had believed in me when no one else did. To Cassandra Mitchell, Warren toasted, raising his glass. Richard would have been proud today. To Mitchell Innovation, Sophia added. The real Mitchell legacy. To the future, Jonathan concluded, which belongs to those brave enough to create it. As we celebrated, I realized something profound had shifted. I was no longer defining myself in opposition to my family. I was building something entirely my own, something worthy of the name Mitchell, but unbound by its past limitations. And somewhere, I hoped my father was indeed watching, finally seeing me clearly at last. 6 months after winning the Hoffman Global contract, Mitchell Innovation had transformed. We'd expanded from our modest Cambridge office to a proper headquarters in Boston's Innovation District. Our staff had tripled, our valuation had quintupled, and we were fielding calls daily from companies around the world interested in our technology. The Hoffman implementation had been a resounding success, generating efficiency improvements that exceeded even our optimistic projections. Their case study had become our most powerful marketing tool, opening doors that had previously been firmly shut. Mitchell Enterprises, meanwhile, was struggling. Their outdated approach to supply chain management was losing ground as the industry shifted toward adaptive systems like ours. Their stock had dropped 15% in the last quarter alone, and industry gossip suggested their board was growing restless with James's leadership. I had intentionally kept my distance from my family during this period, focusing instead on building my company and healing old wounds. Sophia had introduced me to a therapist who specialized in family trauma, and those weekly sessions had helped me understand that my worth had never been dependent on my family's validation. The email from James caught me by surprise one Tuesday morning. Family meeting, Mitchell residence, Thursday, 7 p.m. Urgent matters to discuss. No greeting, no sign-off, just a command, as if I were still the little sister who would jump at his beck and call. I nearly deleted it, but curiosity won out. What could possibly be urgent enough for James to reach out after months of silence? I consulted with Warren, Sophia, and Jonathan before responding. "It's a trap," Sophia said immediately. "He's desperate and looking for leverage." Or information, Jonathan added. "Mitchell Enterprises is hemorrhaging clients to us. He may be fishing for insights." On the other hand, Warren mused, "There's nothing more dangerous than a wounded animal. Better to know what he's planning than be blindsided later." In the end, I decided to attend, but on my terms. I replied that I would come but would be bringing my company's legal counsel. James's terse response. Fine suggested this wasn't the answer he'd hoped for. Thursday evening, I walked up the familiar steps of the Mitchell family brownstone for the first time in years. The house looked exactly the same, imposing, elegant, cold. My childhood home, but never really my home. Our family lawyer, Gregory Winters, who had executed my father's will and now served as Mitchell Innovation's counsel, accompanied me. His presence gave me a confidence I might have lacked otherwise. James opened the door himself, looking less polished than I remembered. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his typically immaculate suit seemed slightly rumpled. "Cassandra," he nodded curtly. "Mr. Winters, I didn't expect you." "I go where my client requires my services," Gregory replied smoothly. The family was gathered in the formal living room. Mother sat rigidly on the antique settee, a glass of white wine clutched a bit too tightly in her manicured hand. Kimberly perched beside her, looking uncomfortable. James took his position standing by the fireplace, our father's old spot. I noted with a pang of something between nostalgia and resentment. "Thank you for coming," James began, his tone carefully controlled. "We have a situation that affects the entire Mitchell family, so it seemed appropriate to discuss it together." "What situation?" I asked, remaining standing rather than taking a seat as expected. James and Mother exchanged glances. Mitchell Enterprises is at a crossroads, he said finally. The market is shifting more rapidly than anticipated toward adaptive management systems. Our development team has been unable to match the advances your company has made. I'm aware, I said. Was there something specific you wanted to discuss, or did you invite me here just to acknowledge that I was right? Kimberly winced at my directness. Mother took a large sip of her wine. We'd like to propose a merger, James said, the words clearly difficult for him to speak. Mitchell Enterprises and Mitchell Innovation. Combined resources, combined talent pools. One unified Mitchell presence in the market. I stared at him, momentarily speechless. Of all the scenarios I'd imagined, this hadn't been one of them. A merger, I repeated. On what terms exactly? Equitable ones, he said quickly. You would retain leadership of the software division. Mitchell Enterprises would handle the broader business operations, client relationships, finance. So I'd be working for you, I interrupted. Developing technology while you control the business. It would be a partnership, he insisted, but his eyes slid away from mine. James, I said quietly, do you think I'm an idiot? The bluntness of the question hung in the air. Mother made a small sound of disapproval. Your company is failing, I continued. You've lost the technological edge, you've lost market confidence, and now you're trying to salvage what's left by absorbing my success. This isn't a merger proposal, it's a takeover attempt disguised as reconciliation. How dare you, Mother snapped. After everything this family has done for you. What exactly has this family done for me? I asked, genuinely curious. Belittled me? Stolen from me? Undermined me at every turn? We're still family, Kimberly said softly. Despite everything. Family, I repeated. You keep using that word, but family doesn't spy on each other. Family doesn't hack into each other's servers. Family doesn't try to destroy each other's life work. James's head snapped up. What are you talking about? I nodded to Gregory, who opened his briefcase and removed a folder. We have evidence of multiple attempts by Mitchell Enterprises to engage in corporate espionage against Mitchell Innovation, he stated professionally. Including but not limited to unauthorized access to our servers prior to the Hoffman Global presentation, deliberate dissemination of false information about our products, and attempted theft of proprietary code. He placed several documents on the coffee table. James didn't touch them, but his face had gone pale. David Winters came to me, I explained. He provided recordings of your conversations, copies of your emails. We have it all, James. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. We've refrained from legal action thus far out of respect for the family name. But if there are any further attempts to undermine Mitchell Innovation, we'll have no choice but to pursue all available remedies. The room fell silent. James stared at the documents on the table like they might bite him. Mother looked shell-shocked. Kimberly seemed torn between horror and a strange sort of admiration. What do you want? James finally asked. Nothing, I replied honestly. I didn't come here to threaten or demand. I came because, despite everything, I was curious what was so urgent we needed a family meeting. Now I know. I turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. For what it's worth, I don't want to see Mitchell Enterprises fail. It was Dad's legacy too, but its future is in your hands, not mine. Maybe it's time to stop trying to destroy what I'm building and focus on fixing what you've broken. As Gregory and I walked down the brownstone steps into the cool Boston evening, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not triumphant, exactly, but free. Whatever happened to Mitchell Enterprises now wasn't my responsibility or my burden. The next day, I received a surprising call from Warren. Have you seen the business news? He asked without preamble. Not yet, why? Mitchell Enterprises announced this morning that James is stepping down as CEO. The board has appointed an interim leader while they search for a permanent replacement. Their stock is up 8% on the news. I sat back in my chair, processing this information. Did we cause that? With the meeting yesterday? Who knows? Warren chuckled. But I wouldn't be surprised if your brother was facing some difficult questions from his board about those corporate espionage allegations. Stepping down might have been the least bad option. After hanging up, I sat quietly in my office, watching the bustling innovation district through my window. I'd imagined this moment differently, a victory lap perhaps, or at least satisfaction in James's comeuppance. Instead, I felt a complicated mix of vindication, relief, and a touch of sadness for what might have been if our family had been different. Sophia, Jonathan, and Warren suggested we host an industry gala to celebrate Mitchell Innovation's first anniversary. It would be a chance to showcase our success, strengthen client relationships, and position ourselves as a long-term industry leader rather than a flashy newcomer. I agreed, and the planning began. The venue was booked, invitations sent, speeches prepared. And then, a week before the event, I received 3 unexpected RSVPs. James, Mother, and Kimberly Mitchell. The stage was set for one final confrontation, or, perhaps, an unexpected new beginning. The night of the gala arrived, transforming the top floor of Boston's most prestigious hotel into a celebration of innovation and success. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city lights, a fitting backdrop for Mitchell Innovation's emergence as an industry leader. I stood at the center of it all in a midnight blue gown, greeting clients, partners, and industry figures with a confidence that still sometimes surprised me. Warren, Sophia, and Jonathan circulated through the crowd, each having become not just mentors but dear friends whose belief in me had made everything possible. A slight stir near the entrance caught my attention. My family had arrived. Mother entered first, elegant as always in designer couture, her smile fixed and professional. Kimberly followed, stunning in red, her eyes darting nervously around the room. And finally James, looking both commanding and somehow diminished in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, no longer the CEO of Mitchell Enterprises but still very much a Mitchell. I excused myself from my conversation and made my way toward them, aware of curious eyes watching this family reunion. "Thank you for coming," I said formally, offering my hand first to Mother, then Kimberly, then James. "Lovely event, Cassandra," Mother replied, her eyes taking in the prestigious crowd. "Quite impressive." "Your company has been the talk of Boston," Kimberly added. "Everyone's trying to figure out how you did it." "Hard work, good people, the right technology," I said simply, "and learning from past mistakes, my own and others." James understood the subtle dig but didn't rise to it. Instead, he looked around with genuine curiosity. "I saw your latest quarterly results. The growth is remarkable." "Thank you," I said, surprised by the sincere compliment. An awkward silence fell. We were Mitchell enough to maintain appearances in public, but the deeper conversation would have to wait. "Please enjoy yourselves," I said finally. "The bar is excellent, and dinner will be served in an hour." As the evening progressed, I kept an eye on my family from a distance. Mother worked the room like the social expert she was, though I noticed several former Mitchell Enterprises clients deliberately avoiding her. Kimberly seemed to be genuinely enjoying herself, chatting animatedly with some of our younger engineers. James stood mostly alone, nursing a scotch and observing everything with the calculated attention that had once made him a formidable competitor. During a quiet moment between courses, he approached me on the terrace where I'd stepped out for some air. "You've created something remarkable," he said without preamble, joining me at the railing. "I didn't want to see it before, but it's undeniable now." I studied his face for signs of manipulation but found only tired honesty. "Thank you, James. That means something, coming from you." He swirled his drink, ice clinking against crystal. "I've had a lot of time to think since stepping down. About Dad, about the company, about what went wrong. And what conclusions have you reached?" That I confused inheritance with achievement. That I was so focused on being worthy of the Mitchell name that I forgot what made it worth something in the first place. He glanced at me. "Dad saw that in you. The real innovative spirit that built Mitchell Enterprises originally. I was just maintaining what already existed." I hadn't expected this level of self-awareness from my brother. "What will you do now?" "I'm starting something new, smaller, more focused." A hint of his old confidence returned. "The board kept me on as a strategic advisor, but honestly, I'm relieved to be out of the CEO role. It never really fit." "I hope it works out for you," I said, and meant it. "Cassie," he hesitated, using my childhood nickname for the first time in years. "I know we can't undo the past, but is there any chance for, I don't know, some kind of relationship in the future, professional or otherwise?" I considered his question carefully. "I'm not sure, James. Trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired, but I'm not closing that door entirely." We're still Mitchells, for better or worse. He nodded, accepting this partial olive branch. For what it's worth, I am sorry. For a lot of things. Before I could respond, Mother appeared at the doorway. There you are. People are asking for a speech, Cassandra. I excused myself and returned to the main room, taking my place at the podium. As I looked out over the gathered crowd, I saw all the chapters of my journey represented. My brilliant team who had built something extraordinary alongside me. Warren, Sophia, and Jonathan, beaming with mentor's pride. And my family, standing awkwardly together near the back, witnessing a success they had never anticipated. Thank you all for coming tonight, I began. A year ago, Mitchell Innovation was a startup with big ideas and bigger obstacles. Today, we're transforming how global business approaches supply chain management. That transformation wasn't easy or straightforward, but the most valuable journeys rarely are. As I spoke about our vision for the future, I could see Mother watching me with a complex expression, pride mingled with regret, perhaps recognizing for the first time what she had missed by dismissing me for so many years. After the speech, she approached me alone. "You speak very well," she said. "You always did have a way with words, even as a child." "Thank you, Mother." She fidgeted with her pearl necklace, uncharacteristically nervous. "I may have been hasty in my assessment of your potential. It appears I was wrong about many things." Coming from Evelyn Mitchell, this was practically a full apology and admission of guilt. "We all make mistakes," I said, not unkindly. "The question is whether we learn from them." "Indeed." She glanced around at the prestigious event bearing our family name. "Your father would have been proud. He always said you had a special kind of intelligence." I should have listened more carefully. Later, I found Kimberly by the dessert table, looking more relaxed after a few glasses of champagne. "This is amazing, Cassie," she said, gesturing around. "You did all this yourself." "Not by myself. I had help, the right kind of help." She nodded, understanding the distinction. "I've been thinking a lot about our childhood. How different things might have been if we'd actually supported each other instead of competing for scraps of attention." "It wasn't entirely our fault," I said. "We were set up to be rivals." Still, she met my eyes directly. "I'm sorry I wasn't a better sister. I'm trying to be better now." "With what?" I asked, genuinely curious about her life. "I'm working with a nonprofit that helps young girls get into STEM fields." She smiled at my surprised expression. "Inspired by you, actually. Turns out there's more to life than being the pretty one." As the evening wound down, I found myself back on the terrace, this time joined by Warren, Sophia, and Jonathan. "Quite a night," Warren commented, looking out at the city lights. "Quite a year," I corrected. "Your father would have been proud," Sophia said, echoing my mother's words, but with a depth of understanding my mother could never match. "You know," Jonathan said thoughtfully, "Richard planned many things, but even he couldn't have predicted exactly how this would unfold." "What do you mean?" I asked. Warren smiled. "Your father knew James would likely misuse his inheritance. He knew you would struggle but probably find your way eventually. He arranged for us to help if you showed promise. But he didn't know you'd exceed everyone's expectations so thoroughly," Sophia continued. "He didn't know James would sabotage himself so completely through his own actions. And he certainly couldn't have predicted that you would not only equal his success but potentially surpass it," Jonathan concluded. "Was it all a test, then?" I asked, a question that had haunted me since reading my father's letter, my whole life after he died. "Not a test," Warren corrected gently. "A path. Richard couldn't give you everything directly. It would have destroyed you as surely as it nearly destroyed James. But he could create conditions where you might find your own way, if you were strong enough. And you were," Sophia said simply, "stronger than anyone anticipated." As they left me alone with my thoughts, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. From the unwanted daughter to the triumphant CEO. From the worthless one to the most successful Mitchell of my generation. My family now stood in my shadow, positions reversed from our childhood. But revenge, I realized, wasn't what I'd really wanted all along. What I'd sought was recognition of my value, my abilities, my right to the Mitchell name. And I'd found it not through their validation, but by creating something valuable entirely on my own terms. The true worth of a person isn't determined by family legacy or others' expectations. It's built through perseverance, integrity, and the courage to forge your own path even when everyone tells you it's impossible. I had proven my worth, most importantly, to myself. As I prepared to leave, I took one last look at the Boston skyline, at the city that had witnessed both my greatest struggles and my greatest triumphs. The Mitchell name now stood for something new, something I had defined, and that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to hear about times when you've been underestimated but proved everyone wrong. Has your family or people close to you ever doubted your dreams? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories of resilience and triumph, and hit that share button to inspire someone who might be facing similar challenges. Remember, your worth isn't defined by others' opinions of you, it's created through your own actions and determination. Until next time.